Good morning. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I know we have people from across the hemisphere. Ambassador Baki, I know we have members of the 30 Club with us. I think there's an echo. One moment. Okay. Anyway, I'm just so thrilled to launch our ambassadors dialogue this morning with two incredibly skilled, experienced ambassadors. First, I should introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Bill Chavez. I'm president and CEO of the Inter-American Dialogue. So we're joined today with Daniela Stevens, my colleague who focuses on the climate and the energy transition. And then I just want to highlight that we've got, like I said, two of my favorite ambassadors. And I'm so lucky to call you both friends. So we have Ambassador Ivana Baki and Ambassador Michael Fitzpatrick. I'm going to start with an introduction of Ambassador Abaki. She is a true Renaissance woman. Ambassador Baki has served as Ecuador's ambassador to the United States since 2020, and she also served in this capacity from 1998 to 2002, which of course helps explain her deep understanding of the US-Ecuador bilateral relationship and also its evolution over time. Not only is Ambassador Baki a diplomat and a politician, she's also a renowned artist. And it's a gift that she has used to build bridges, to unite people, which in itself could be the topic of an entire event or workshop. But today we're going to focus on her diplomatic and political experience. The ambassador's diplomatic career includes extensive experience in the Middle East as ambassador of Ecuador to Qatar and ambassador non-resident of Ecuador to Iraq, Kuwait, Lebanon, Jordan, Oman, and Syria. The ambassador's long list of accomplishments include her role in the 1998 Ecuador-Peru Peace Accord. She was the first woman to be posted as Ecuador's Minister of Foreign Trade, Industry, Regional Integration, Fisheries, and Competitiveness. And she was the president of both the Andean Parliament and of the Commission for Economic Affairs of the European Latin American Parliament. Ambassador Abaki studied arts at the Sorbonne University and earned a master's degree in public administration and public policy at Harvard's Kennedy School. Ambassador Mike Fitzpatrick has served as U.S. ambassador to Ecuador since 2019. He is a career diplomat with deep experience and understanding of Latin America and the Caribbean. He also has an amazing bio, including important postings in both Africa and Europe, but I'm going to focus on the Western Hemisphere. Ambassador Fitzpatrick represents the very best of the U.S. Foreign Service. I consider myself fortunate to have worked with Ambassador Fitzpatrick during 3 of his previous assignments as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, as the U.S. representative to the Organization of American States, and as Deputy Chief of Mission in Lima, Peru. And actually, I believe, Ambassador Fitzpatrick, that's where we had our first dinner, was in Lima with your amazing wife, Silvana. And I remember just being blown away by your understanding of the complexities and the nuances of our bilateral relationship with Peru. I'm not alone in my admiration of Ambassador Fitzpatrick. It's reflected in the many honors he's received, which are too long to list. I encourage you to look up his bio. And Ambassador Fitzpatrick holds a bachelor's degree from Georgetown and a master's in international affairs from Columbia University. So we're here today to talk about the US-Ecuador relationship. Our two countries have a long history of cooperation and many mutual interests, including in democratic governance, in economic prosperity and equity, in regional security, in environmental sustainability and protection, and addressing the hemisphere-wide migration crisis. Given the democratic backsliding in much of Latin America and the Caribbean, as the US government develops a strategic vision for the Americas, for the entire Americas, it is my hope that the strategy prioritizes partners that share the components of liberal democracy and the values that are associated with liberal democracy. As a democratic leader in the hemisphere, Ecuador should be on that list of priority countries. And both ambassadors with us today have advocated effectively for this idea. As we'll hear from them in a moment, given the robust nature of our bilateral agenda, the US-Ecuador partnership should receive more attention, which is one reason Ecuador is the focus of our first ambassador dialogue. Ecuador and the other Alliance for Development and Democracy countries should be a central player in the Americas partnership on economic prosperity. Ecuador is an ideal candidate for nearshoring, for fair trade, and for investment in climate-friendly infrastructure development. We'll also have an opportunity to hear about US-Ecuador cooperation to address the alarming growth in citizen insecurity, which is captured in recent headlines about crime and violence in Guayaquil. When it comes to implementation of the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, Ecuador is going to be a critical partner. In fact, it already is. We've witnessed Ecuador's leadership and hospitality as a host to over 500,000 Venezuelan refugees. Another key area of cooperation is the climate crisis. Ecuador is a leader in this space, which I know is a long-term priority, has been a long-term priority for Ambassador Abaki. And on the climate, I've asked the newest member of the Inter-American Dialogue family, Daniela Stevens, who is director of our climate program, to join us. For those of you who haven't yet met Daniela, she's doing fabulous cutting edge work on the energy transition in Latin America and the Caribbean. So here I'm going to turn it over to the ambassadors for welcoming remarks. And I just want to thank you both again so much for joining us today. I just wish I were there in person.
Nice. Yes,
please.
Well, first of all, I would love to have you in person here, Rebecca. As I told you, it would be a pleasure to have you. Next time we can do something together. But thank you for the introduction. Thank you for what you are doing in the Inter-American Dialogue. I think it's an amazing opportunity for all of Latin America to take advantage of this institution that is doing so much. I'm so pleased to be live together with Mike, that is my very good friend. As you mentioned, he is a person that has done so much working together here. I think he's defending Ecuador more than the US, and I defend also. We are complementing each other in the help that is being happening. And talking about the priorities that we have now, I think that when I came first this time, the priority was economic stability, of course, with trade opportunities. But the pandemic happened and it changed, it shifted. So the priorities became the pandemic, but we never in Ecuador forgot about the economic part in the same time. That's why we have, for the first time, the program with the IMF. We got the exceptional access from the IMF. Treasury was supporting, all the multilaterals were supporting. So the concentration was on helping the pandemic. As you mentioned, it was hit. Also, Guayaquil was hit very hardly. And this time, with President Lasso, the priorities also have changed because we have the problem of security. So security is one of the major issues that we have to solve, and we are doing that. But at the same time, without forgetting the economic and trade. He is now focusing with the economics in the social parts extremely to generate jobs, to make the people feel that democracy works, but never forgetting the security, because the security is passing through the most difficult time ever. I've never seen Ecuador. I've been, as you said, 24 years ago, I was ambassador. Ecuador was the most Pacific country. We never had any problems in narco-trafficking or terrorism. And now this time, it's another country. And I can't believe this is happening to my Pacific Ecuador. So that's why I think we have to work very much hand in hand on this priority now. I arrived yesterday night, late at night, and the first message you got was the Ecuador-US Partnership Act 2022 just entered the House of Representatives and is passing in the few days. It's going to be voted, and also it will go then to the Senate, and it will be also passing, and then for President Biden to sign it. This is a historic moment because it's the first bill done especially for Ecuador with the United States. So I think it's an opportunity that we have to work together. It has all the issues that we care about, especially economics and trade, but also the security part, the fighting narco trafficking and illegal actions, concentrating on small, medium industries, inclusion of all sectors. What the president is doing now in Ecuador is inclusion. But what we need most now, it's the trade. That's why President Lasso says we want more Ecuador in the world and more world in Ecuador, because this is the only way to generate jobs and get investment to the country. So this is the first line that we're working together with security. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Yvonne. It's great to be with both of you, good friends from for a long time, and a great opportunity for the United States and Ecuador. I really appreciate the Inter-American Dialogue taking the opportunity to start this series of conversations with ambassadors with the case of Ecuador, because it really is having a moment. Ecuador is having a moment of opportunity, challenges as well. But Yvonne said, I'm here defending Ecuador. If there's anything I'm defending here, and if there's anything I want the audience to take away, perhaps one word: partnership. The United States and Ecuador have a strong partnership. It's having a moment as a partnership, but it's having a moment precisely because it's a partnership based on shared principles and shared values. And that's what both the government of President Lasso, government of President Biden, that's what we are defending. That's what we're working on building together, is that shared partnership based on common principles and priorities. And as far as priorities, I would say, first of all, a great introduction, Rebecca, because you hit them. It's protection of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, expansion of an inclusive, sustainable economic prosperity for everyone, and it's increasing citizen security in North and Central and South America for all of us in the hemisphere. Those are the priorities, plus, of course, and doing that in the middle of an energy transition and protecting the environment at a time where Putin's criminal campaign against both the people and territory of Ukraine are threatening to plunge a number of countries in the world into darkness, into cold in the winter in the Northern Hemisphere. These are global challenges. The threats that we're all facing, whether it's on democracy, environment, human rights, energy, these are challenges democracies worldwide are facing. And I'm just, we'll dig into some of these issues here. But even as I look to the challenges that facing democracy, whether it's in South America, North America, Europe, or elsewhere, I just saw the headlines this morning. Germany arrested more than 24 people involved in a conspiracy to overthrow the democratic government of Germany, for Pete's sakes. Democracies as such are having a global challenge. Part of it sponsored, initiated, supported by the digital transformation, the challenges in the information space. These are all issues we can talk about, Rebecca, but I'm just thrilled to be here. And again, very much want to thank you and the dialogue, appreciate all of your efforts to kickstart this whole campaign of ambassadorial conversations with Yvonne and myself here in Quito. And yes, we look forward to hosting you down in Quito or Guayaquil anytime soon.
Thank you so much. What I thought I would do is actually start with the question, this issue of, because one of the things that came up in the opening remarks was the fact that one of the challenges to democracy region-wide is that people don't think that democracy is delivering. And one of the key areas that we're seeing this happen is in this area of combating crime and violence. And we see the outcome of that in places like Ecuador, where it's given Bukele really just it's kind of contributed to his ability to accumulate power within the executive branch. And but we want, I know that for President Lasso, democracy delivering across fronts, not just in security, but also when it comes to economic prosperity and equity. But when it comes to this really alarming rise in crime and violence, the fact that the homicide rate has gone up so rapidly. I know that the mayor of Guayaquil recently said that criminal gangs have become a state within a state. So this idea that these transnational criminal organizations are now operating in Ecuador. I'm wondering where you see or where you've seen the most effective U.S.-Ecuador cooperation in combating the scourge of crime and violence, and what more we can do.
I'm not sure who that was directed to, but let me take a first shot at it, Rebecca. The growth of security challenges here is quite worrying. But the good thing is we have best practices. We have ways that we have learned, we the United States, but other countries in the region as well have learned the hard way. And what we want to be able to do is build upon those best practices learned in Colombia and Mexico, in the United States, elsewhere. What we see in Guayaquil in particular right now with the transnational gangs and cartels that are here, it's Colombian groups, it's Mexican groups, but it's also European mafias as well, to say nothing of local-based gangs, drug groups that are trying to find a way, frankly, to integrate themselves vertically and internationally. And I think part of the reason is, why has there been a spike of violence in Ecuador? One, because the amount of drugs that the government of Ecuador has been able to intercept has gone up, just in my time here, 4 to 6 times as much. This past year, more than 300 metric tons of drugs have been seized by Ecuador, a country that does not produce cocaine or any other drugs in significant quantities. Much of that is being transshipped through the ports of Ecuador to markets in Europe, markets in the United States, but globally. But what we've been able to do, first of all, Ecuador has decided as a country, they're going to fight back. They're going to defend their democracy, their rule of law. And that's the biggest thing they have going for themselves now, is they've recognized that there's a growing threat, and they're willing to take it on early and with strong partnerships with the Europeans, with the United States, with Colombia and Mexico and others, Peru as well, of course, another neighboring country that produces cocaine. It is a regional response to a regional, if not global, problem, and that's the first thing I will say, is that there is the willingness and the openness by the government, by elements of the state, not just the executive branch here, to partner with tried and true partners internationally to combat this. And the fact that civil society is also awake and is not cowed, on the contrary, they are pushing back and saying, we're not going to take this. And so that is a great thing I think Ecuador has going for it at this point, in addition to strong partners abroad.
And I will just add that what Mike is saying is exactly that. That's why President Lasso is uniting the country against this terrible cancer, I call it, that it has to become. But we cannot do it alone. And that's why the support of not only the United States and the region, but also the world. I mean, where is it, the drug going? It's going to the United States and to Europe. So there is a shared responsibility, because we cannot do it alone. So the concentration of the president now, it's supporting the people economically to show them that democracy is working, which is not easy. But at the same time, he has to take care of security. So it's something that it's huge for Ecuador alone to do it.
Thank you both so much on that. Well, I'll just as a side, I have read about some interesting programs when you mentioned civil society, about kind of prevention too, that are taking place in Ecuador with partnership with civil society to kind of prevent the youth from kind of entering this way of life, and kind of as a working with civil society and youth to address it at the root, which is helpful. So I'm going to turn it over now to Daniela to ask a question about climate and energy transition.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, Ambassador Abaki, Ambassador Fitzpatrick, and thank you for joining us in the inaugural session of Ambassador Dialogues. It's a true honor to have you here, and I'm particularly excited to hear your thoughts and plans about how to tackle the climate crisis. After COP26 last year, the United States approved the provision of technical assistance grants to Ecuador to develop energy efficiency projects that ultimately benefited the Guayaquil Airport, the national electricity operator. What are the lessons learned of this effort? And were there new or renewed commitments at COP27 last November? You mentioned a key word, Ambassador Fitzpatrick, partnership. What areas do you think would be most impactful to tackle together?
Partnership in the energy and environmental sectors. First of all, I don't know that if everyone recognizes that Ecuador is perhaps the most biodiverse country on the planet, if you take it by square mile. 0.3% of the world's land mass has, I think, 18 to 20% of the species of amphibians and birds here. It's amazingly biodiverse for a country the size of the United States state of Colorado. In the environment/energy sector, there are amazing opportunities for partnership. Number one, renewable energies in general will address two challenges: the energy transition and climate change, the protection of the environment, and climate change mitigation. In Ecuador, you have a country that is blessed with hydro capabilities. It has extraordinary opportunities for solar as well as wind. And just in recent weeks, I've traveled to Loja, down towards the Ecuador-Peru border, where there are both already ongoing solar and wind projects, and there will be additional projects coming online soon. The main areas that the United States is helping with, whether it's hydro, solar, wind, environmental protection. We announced on Earth Day this year, $50 million in USAID grant and development assistance opportunities for back to civil society, small groups, but larger opportunities as well. We're looking at, with the Development Finance Corporation in the United States, we're looking at financing a lot of this energy transition. Some major solar and wind opportunities will soon be out for public. Some of them will be finalizing these international development projects. Other opportunities will be coming online soon. And we're providing in two main areas of support: financial support and technical assistance in the development of international bids and the developments of these renewable projects, so that when they do come online, first of all, they will have gone through international bid opportunities that will be meeting the best practices for world standards for transparency, for ensuring anti-corruption, and ensuring that international top-line companies will be able to bid on these projects and develop them in partnership with local companies and communities. That's just a couple of examples, and I haven't even talked about the Galapagos.
Yeah, I talk about the Galapagos.
Go ahead, Ivan.
Daniela, thank you for your question and for doing so much for the environment. As Mike was saying, for Galapagos is in my heart, and for me, it's a unique place in the world. So we lead when the Glasgow meetings and COP26, President Lasso presented an initiative that was unique to the world.
Yeah.
The expansion of the marine reserve of the Galapagos Islands, that now with the previous expansion, the new one, we have around 200,000 square kilometers of expansion of that marine reserve. But the good part about that is that other countries united. And this is another partnership that we have to work together for environment. Colombia, Panama, and Costa Rica, together with them, the expansion is 500,000 square kilometers. And this is an example to the world that it works. That we have to do more, because it's not only the land, it's the oceans that are the lungs. I mean, we have the Amazon that are the lungs to the world also, but also the ocean, they have to be kept. So this is something that it's a priority for President Lasso, the environment. That's why we have so many things. I mean, the economic part, the security part, and the environment part, but they all go together. They all go together. We cannot say this is a priority or the other more than the other. They go hand in hand together, because everything is for the human, to protect the human. The earth is going to continue. What is going to be disappearing is the human race. So that's what we have to concentrate on these issues that are global, and that we have to all work together. We're in a small world now. We are so interconnected, whether it's a disease like pandemic that happened very far away. We all were affected and stopped the world for almost 3 years, and now we're still recovering. When it's a war that's between Ukraine and Russia now, an incredible thing to happen. And look, it's what it's causing in the world. The supply chain is missing the things that we need. Just Ecuador, with only 3 products, we lost more than 1.5% of the GDP of Ecuador, just with the shrimp, with the bananas, roses, and shrimp. So this is something that we have to look in a different focus, and Ecuador is leading in all those things.
Indeed, Ambassador Becky, a very suitable name for the natural reserve, Hermandad Natural Reserve, which reflects what
Exactly.
it's a
And
true.
then hermandad translates in English brotherhood, but we're saying brotherhood and sisterhood
Exactly.
partnership.
Partnership.
And Ambassador Fitzpatrick, for that overview of aid. As Secretary Blinken recently mentioned, climate change and helping in climate change is not about sacrifice. It's about opportunity, creativity, and innovation. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Absolutely right.
Thank you. And also your point about partnership, Ambassador Fitzpatrick, and your point, Ambassador Baki, about the fact that, you know, all of these areas where we're working together, whether it be migration, the hemisphere-wide migration crisis, climate, health and pandemic, the economic interconnectedness and integration, none of these are issues that a single country can address alone. And I see so much work being done in the bilateral partnership in all of these areas. But I would like to ask a question. Ambassador Baki, you made the point early on that the economic trade, this has always been central to the bilateral relationship. Of course, the pandemic, which is very much linked to economic challenges, and then this issue of citizen insecurity are top on the agenda as well. But given your experience, I know when you've been wearing your other hats before this time around as ambassador to the US, you've worked a lot on trade issues and been very successful in trade discussions with the US, with the EU. So I'm wondering where you see opportunities, particular opportunities, whether it be in trade, whether it be in nearshoring, either through the Alliance for Development and Democracy or through the Americas Partnership on Economic Prosperity. Where do you see the greatest opportunities?
That's an excellent point, Rebecca, because again, we're going back to the partnerships, uniting. We cannot do things alone. This, the ADD, the Alliance for Development and Democracy, it's 4 countries together. Also, the APEC, the Americans Partnership for Economic Prosperity, is also the members of the Alliance of Pacific Alliance plus Ecuador that hopefully will be entering soon. And Uruguay was added. So it's all about working together as a team. And the most important thing is that it's not understood, is that if we don't generate jobs, good jobs for the people in our countries to have their dream, they will come to America for the opportunities, for dreams, for the American dream. So that's why it's important to strengthen every country. So maybe doing it together, we can strengthen it more. And the nearshoring is something that's very important. We have labor better than what they are having in Asia. We have environmental conscience that it's very important for investment now. So all these issues, they have to be tackled in a different vision now. We were part, when I was Minister of Trade and Industry, we negotiated together with Colombia and Peru 18 years ago. We would have been already with that, but the government at that time fell, and the new government of Ecuador decided to not be together. So we lost 17, 18 years. Now we are back again because the first issue of President Lasso is to have trade agreements. And it's not because he wants to have trade. It's because it's the only way to create a stability that people will have trust to invest on a long term in order to generate jobs for the people. So that's the main issue. That's why we are negotiating with many countries. Of course, the priority will be with the United States, but we haven't done much. We are just on the phase 1 and entering now the phase 2 of the agreements. With the first one was done last year, implemented last year in August 2021, and it was about transparency, facilitation of trade, small and medium industries. This new phase that we had a very good meeting with Ambassador USTR representative. She realized the importance for Ecuador, and we are starting to talk about the phase 2, which will be mostly about labor, environmental and trade, digital, and also fair trade negotiation, to talk about fair trade. So, Ambassador Tai, so we are in the right direction, but of course we need more than that. So the President Lasso is doing now negotiations with Asia, South Korea, with China. We are finishing soon. We finished already with Mexico. Very shortly, we'll be entering the Pacific Alliance, hopefully, with the negotiations of free trade with Mexico. We have Costa Rica with the Dominican Republic. We are starting next year with Canada. So this is what we have to do in order to generate the dream of the Ecuadorians to stay in their country and don't have to travel to other countries for their dream of prosperity. So that's the main issue.
Thank you. I don't know, Ambassador Fitzpatrick, if you'd like to add to that.
Well, just to add that, as you listed, Rebecca, a number of these sort of transnational problems, whether it's migration, pandemics, et cetera, that's almost, those are examples of globalization, right? All of those are global problems that do not necessarily respect national borders established in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. And what we now have are these global challenges back to partnership, including on the economic side, precisely so that there are economic opportunities here so that people do indeed recognize and respect in international borders, so that Ecuadorians can have safe jobs, safe environment, economic opportunities here for their children and for the next generation here, precisely as Yvonne said, so that they don't feel that they have to strike out on their own, travel across, dangerous territories to try to get to the United States and seek their American dream there. We want Ecuadorians to pursue their Ecuadorian dream here in Ecuador in partnership with the United States. And I will just say at the same time, those people-to-people ties is one of the most amazing things about the US-Ecuador partnership and relationship, because there are even during the pandemic, but before the pandemic, everyone in Ecuador has a family member, it seems, in the United States somewhere. Because of previous economic crises over generations, had prompted migration to the United States. And so we understand each other well. We respect each other as partners. We have our differences as societies, but we also can celebrate in those differences and celebrate in the commonalities. And the fact that President Lasso is indeed pursuing this global engagement, more Ecuador in the world, more world in Ecuador, it is a great opportunity. And as Yvonne mentioned on the trade side, these new areas of negotiations with USTR are stepping stones that could ultimately perhaps be included in a more broad trade agreement of some time at the right moment. But in the meantime, all these things are fundamental to any modern trade relationship, as Yvonne mentioned, fair trade, proper labor standards, environmental protection, and of course, looking forward to the new digital economy. There are great opportunities in Ecuador for that, starting with financial reforms and financial technologies. This country is the largest US dollar-based economy outside of the United States. It's a natural partner for nearshoring, for friendshoring. It's 4 hours to the United States. There are 5-6 different gateway cities in the United States, direct flights to and from Ecuador on a daily basis. Open Skies Agreement was signed last month by the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Toria Nuland, who is down here. The opportunities are there, and for the private sector as well as for civil society and the public sector to take advantage of in both directions. We look to increase that trade, that people-to-people contacts, and so I'm bullish. I'm bullish on the relationship and bullish on Ecuador.
Thank you.
I'm bullish too on the relationship. I'm going to remind the audience that if you want to submit questions using you can use the Q&A function in Zoom, or you can send an email to meetings@thedialogue.org. Let's see, I'm looking now at the questions, but while I'm looking, or I'm going to ask Daniela to take a quick look at the questions. Not only are this issue of the transnational nature of the challenges, that they don't respect boundaries, you both made the point that in addition to that, the issues that we're talking about also intersect in important ways. So example, when we talk about the economy and trade agreements, this idea that that's very much connected to migration and promoted rootedness and hope. So people choose, like you said, to pursue their Ecuadorian dream. Okay, let's turn to questions.
Yes, we have a couple of questions that we received on our meetings at the dialogue.org email. We have one about debt for nature swaps. Minister Manrique, Minister of Environment, has expressed interest in using conservation as a tool in the international financial arena in schemes such as debt for nature swaps. Do you think Ecuador can benefit from these schemes that may involve debt relief? Can we expect to see Ecuador and the US working more closely with multilateral development banks, for example, with the World Bank, to promote the use of these instruments that benefit both conservation?
Yes,
We are working on that. Yes.
go ahead.
We are working on that. We cannot talk more than that. Just we are working on that, and it will be soon announced.
But there are multiple initiatives in that space, debt for nature swaps in Ecuador, whether it's related to protection of the Galapagos, protection of the Amazon. There are multiple different efforts, some very creative financial efforts ongoing. And as Rebecca suggested, these things are so interrelated. Just on the Galapagos, Yvonne mentioned the maritime space. It's 5 times larger. Ecuador's maritime space is 5 times larger than its continental land space. It's an extraordinarily rich environment, maritime environment that needs protection, and that Ecuador is working in partnership with the United States and other countries, as was mentioned, with the Hermandad Marine Reserve. So there are a lot of creative activities in that area. Hopefully some of them will be able to be announced in coming weeks or months, but very, very shortly. Some really great creative opportunities here.
And I think we should be talking more about that now. When I was with the Yasuni National Park, the idea of it was that idea to leave oil underground, but to be compensated by not cutting the trees. But they didn't understand it. It was too avant-garde, I think, at that moment. If it was one now, it will be an example to the world, because that's what we need. We don't need to. And according to Rex Plus, they say you have to cut the trees and we compensate you to reforest. We said, we don't want to reforest. We don't want to cut the trees. That's the idea of being compensated for conservation. I think it's an example of what we did so many years ago.
And another example, just to add, not just the Amazon or the maritime or Galapagos space, but also carbon sequestration. One of the main challenges for protecting, for limiting carbon emissions is preservation of the high Andes.
Yeah.
Glacier melt, the loss of glaciers in the Andes is threatening the peat bogs, the highland peat bogs, the pantano in not only Ecuador but throughout the Andes of South America. And we've been able to, just in my own travels in Ecuador, we are witnessing the melting of the glaciers, the dramatic transformation of the high altitude climates, which are some of the biggest carbon sequestration locations on the planet. And we need to stop that. We need to be able to fight creatively, collectively, in partnership, and have the financial resources to do that, to preserve the current Andean highland ways of life, to protect, everything's so integrated. We're learning just how much that human conduct, human activities in the highlands affect the species, which affect the plants, which affect the rainwater collection, which affects the glacier melt. It's all interconnected.
Indeed.
Thank you. So there are 2 questions I want to touch on, and then there's another on climate that I'm going to turn over to Daniela. But one is about what will be the impact of the 2022 US-Ecuador partnership on trade, and there's a related kind of series of questions about China and Ecuador and the US. The US view on that. And then a separate topic just is prisons. This has become an issue across the region. So if you could comment on either one of those, that would be great. And then we'll turn it back to climate. I know there are different questions, but we're getting a lot on
you mentioned the first question was about the what was it exactly? The question, the first one?
The first one was, I think that in the broader, there's several on this, and I think the theme is that given the US concern about China and the region.
I'll tell you about that's something that you should talk about it openly about that. When I was here 24 years ago, the whole map of the hemisphere, Latin America and the Caribbean, the number one trading partner was the US. I come back this time, they ask me, what's the difference? All the map is China, the number one trading partner. Ecuador was, until 2 months ago, the number one partner was the United States. Now it's no more. So this is what we have to realize. There has been not understanding of the importance to give to the hemisphere. We are stronger than any other continent together. What is going to be missing in the world is water. We have it in quantities, as the ambassador was mentioning about the mountains. He climbs the mountains and he sees how it's melting. But all this can be used, minerals, all kinds of richness, products. What's going to be lacking after the pandemic and because of the war? It's products that are organic. The best products in the world are in the region. So this is a continent that we have. They are not. United States is not looking as it should to create a stronger hemisphere. Europe did it. The stronger countries supported the weaker one economically, and they opened frontiers not just to products, but to people. So they could go because they had their own dream in each country. They don't have to travel and immigrate to other places. So we need to work on that. Ecuador is dollarized. I wish other countries would be dollarized also, because we have the lowest inflation now, even if less than the United States. The inflation here, 8 point something, and Ecuador is 2 point something. So this is things that they should showcase that we are doing the right thing. President Lasso is doing an amazing job in supporting democracy, human rights, freedom of speech, economic stability, and it could be a case study, Ecuador. So they should take more advantage. They will be serving the United States, not Ecuador, if they give more attention to Ecuador and to the whole region.
Ambassador Fitzpatrick, I don't know if you wanted to add to that. I really appreciate the candor on this topic.
Well, just to add on the US-Ecuador Partnership Act in particular, I think what this act and the expected approval of it by the House and Senate in coming days, it sends a very strong message to not only to the executive branch of the United States, but frankly to the region. It says to all of Latin America, kind of going back to Yvonne's point about building a sort of regional front, shall we say, of democratic partners, whether it's on economics, for nearshoring, as I said before, friendshoring, being able to work together, having a reliable, confident partners that you can work with in a commercial space, in a space for trade that is rules-based, based in transparency, based on the rule of law, based on sort of basic free, fair, level playing field for investment opportunities. That is what I think this partnership speaks to. It speaks to not only economic integration with Ecuador, but it speaks to supporting them in terms of security, in terms of anti-corruption efforts, in terms of, as we talked earlier, about environment and energy, sustainability, helping with their transition. All these issues that we've been talking about are addressed in one way or another in this US-Ecuador Partnership Act. So it sends a really strong message to the region that the US-Ecuador partnership matters, that the United States Congress is paying attention. We just recently hosted down here with Yvonne, as well as the government of Ecuador. Senator Menendez and many other members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee came down here, traveled not only to Quito, but also to other parts of the country to look at the challenges and opportunities for our partnership. And so what that Partnership Act signals again is that this is a real opportunity, and it's a challenge for the United States, and we need to step up our game.
And we need to have more of this. I mean, this is exactly the idea. We need to have more, like the Senate, and the Congress of the United States is doing. We need to do it also with the other branch. I think the Summit of the Americas helped a lot.
Yes.
I think the Summit of the Americas was very positive, and I believe now with the appointment also of Senator Christopher Dodd after the summit to be the present representative in the region, this is going to be something that it means that they are looking to the region. In fact, Secretary Mayorkas is arriving now in 1 hour. So we'll be going to receive him, and it's about the security issue. He's coming to Ecuador and then to Colombia. So yeah, it's going going better, but we have to push for it. I think it should be the opposite. It should be United States should be asking the region to be, and that's what happened in the Summit of the Americas. President Biden was very, we saw the interest he has in the region. We know that from before, when he was vice president, but then it was shown in all the topics that immigration, environment, democracy. So these were topics that were talked there, and the economic and trade not much, but nearshoring, friendshoring. So we are in that direction, but this is groups like yours, like the dialogue, and with all the people listening to that, it's helpful for both the region and also understanding more of where the opportunities are in this region.
And let me just add that on the executive branch side, we are indeed already stepping up our engagement with Ecuador across the executive branch. Just in recent weeks, we have a very excited, engaged, and probably a little bit tired embassy staff right now, because just in the last 2 months, as I mentioned, we had the Senate Foreign Relations Committee here, but we've also had in subsequent weeks, we've had senior representatives from the State Department, from the Defense Department, from Health and Human Services. And indeed, after we finish this conversation today, Yvonne and I will be heading out to the airport, and we will be receiving Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, and his team will be arriving, also with representatives from the National Security Council, coming down for meetings today and tomorrow with President Lasso and his team, precisely to discuss many of the issues we've been touching on here today. The breadth and depth of the relationship is expanding at a very intense speed, and a lot of opportunities, indeed challenges on the security side. We'll be talking about that. Migration, cyber, we haven't even talked about that, but that's another area of challenges here, but some real opportunities for cooperation, not just bilaterally, but again, regionally. And my gosh, we have not even mentioned, how could we go this far into the conversation, talking about partnerships and security issues. In January, the United States and other permanent representatives at the UN Security Council will welcome Ecuador onto the Security Council for the next 2 years as a member of the Security Council. We look forward to partnering with Ecuador on a range of not just regional, but global security issues, starting with, again, the criminal invasion of Ukraine by Russia.
I just love this part of the discussion. I think one of our responsibilities at the Inter-American Dialogue, and actually all of us here today, is to kind of push the US government to pay more attention, to prioritize the region more. China is definitely one reason, but there are other reasons. There's so many opportunities in the hemisphere. One thing that I mentioned in my remarks is this idea of developing a strategy for the region. I think that I very much hope that the Biden administration is doing that. That vision, as you said, should really not focus on left versus right, but instead on which countries are democratic, respect the rule of law, here, countries like Ecuador, like Chile. I really welcome the comments that you just made about the best thing the US can do to compete, let's say, with China, is to engage and to follow through on commitments. And with that, I'm going to turn it. I had prisons. I don't know if either of you want to address briefly kind of the prison situation in Ecuador. And then I want to turn it over to Daniela, because she has a question on climate.
Sure. On the prison side, it's been horrific, quite simply, to see more than 400 people killed in the prisons in Ecuador in the last year and a half. Virtually all of them, I have to underscore, killed by gangs within the prison, not killed by state agents at all here in Ecuador. But it speaks to how, for many, many, many years, not just in Ecuador, but a number of countries, the prisons have been, talk about human rights, the prisons have been a bleeding sore on human rights in the region, because they've been turned into warehouses for human beings. And what has happened is they have been You want to talk about violations of sovereignty? They've been taken over as free operating spaces by the cartels, international, transnational organized crime, narcotics trafficking, and other criminal gangs, taking these over and using them as their safe havens to run their international criminal operations. President Lasso and his government have said, with support from the United States, with support from the European Union, with support from the United Nations as well, number of recommendations come down from all these international partners. The president and his team here are patiently, slowly, but surely implementing these long-term prison reforms. And that has sparked this violence into great measure that we've seen in recent weeks and months here in Ecuador, as the gangs are saying, oh, no. This is our free space. You're not going to insist on national sovereignty in what is supposed to be criminal sovereignty. And President Lasso has said, no, we're going to push back on that. And he just announced last night he will be going to the National Assembly today to ask for constitutional reforms to provide greater authorities in support for the military to work in support of the underfunded, understaffed police in Ecuador. And I should also note that in 2 months' time, in February, there will be a national plebiscite here, concomitant with their, shall we say, midterm elections, the elecciones seccionales for mayors and other subnational authorities here. There will be a number of questions put to the public on citizen security, on environment, that a number of questions that will go to the public. So this is also part of the longer-term effort to reassert national sovereignty and control and extend it to those areas that have been safe havens, the prison system. And it's painful. The cartels, they have learned how to intimidate, threaten, and indeed terrorize. And
that's a good point. That's a very good point, because they are threatening, but they have a lot of money.
Yeah,
they are bringing so much money. So if a person doesn't have a job that is enough for his family or her family, and they come and they offer thousands of dollars, they will do it. I mean, put yourself in their places. I'm not saying that it's correct. That's why the president is so stressed now, so concentrated now on giving support to these families, generating other ways like the el del barrio, the culture of the to do cultural events, soccer teams in the villages where they have, so the children will not go into drugs, and the youth to have jobs, to give them opportunities. So it goes hand in hand again. Security goes with economic stability. So this is what's happening. It's the first time in Ecuador that we see something like that. They have a lot of money and they're coming here. And they are taking Ecuadorians in their own cartels, the ones from Mexico and the ones from Colombia. So now Ecuadorians are integrated also. Very sad.
Programs that you described are exactly what I was talking about when it comes to these partnerships with civil society on the prevention front.
indeed.
So thank you for those.
Grassroots.
Grassroots, exactly. Unfortunately, I think there's so many questions. And so maybe we can have a part 2 in person in Quito. And
Yes.
Mike, on that, you have to take me. I've seen your pictures. Ambassador Baki referred to the mountains, your beautiful photos from your mountaineering. So I'm also gonna.
Well, I'm doing the mountains, but mountaineering, but they're the beautiful part of their mountains. It's a extraordinarily beautiful country, rich opportunities, not just for ecotourism, but for just getting back to basics. It's really a remarkable country, population, and cultural diversity that's worthy of exploring.
Thank you. This is great.
So
I have a better.
Ambassador Baki, I am going to take those as your beautiful closing words, Ambassador Fitzpatrick, because they're going to cut us off. But Ambassador Baki, do you have any concluding words?
Just to thank you, really, Rebecca. You and Daniela are amazing. You're doing a great job. I want to say that this relationship is historic, Ecuador and the United States. And it has to be nourished. It's like a plant. If you don't give it water, it doesn't, it dies. So I think we are now in the right moment for that. They call us now the light of the light of the Americas, because we're doing the thing correctly. President Lasso is doing what he should do in democracy. We have the same values, so it's an opportunity. When we do this bill that just is going to pass, it's another opportunity. So we have to just see the positive. The missing part that we have in Ecuador is that people don't see the positive side of what we are doing. So we have to communicate it, do more of these events, and with other people, not just the ambassadors, but with Ecuadorians and the US, also those that are in investing in Ecuador, to know, so that they will be communicating this, because what you don't communicate, it doesn't exist. And we have very good and positive things that are happening, but it's not communicated. So thank you very much for this dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you, ambassadors. There is ample opportunity for both countries to focus on the energy transition, on conservation, on climate mitigation and adaptation. So I thank you both for your remarks. Furthermore, I would like to thank the remarks of Ambassador Fitzpatrick, considering that all these technologies for carbon capture, capture management and storage, they're also capital intensive, technology intensive, and the help of the United States will be very much well received. I appreciate you joining us in this first conversation.
Yeah, so thank you so much to you both. And yes, I look forward to continuing to work with you and for you. But I very much, I appreciate your support of the Inter-American Dialogue very much. And we will continue our mission to elevate these issues that you both so skillfully discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks to the dialogue for this dialogue. It'll continue.
I like that.